Hello there, Metasynth here. Today is another episode of BJD and a cup of tea. There's no tea in here. I'm just kidding. There's no tea. Let's not be silly. The real tea. Cat scratch tea. Today we're doing a spooky episode. I am going to share with you some real life spooky encounters with BJDs. For centuries, dolls have fascinated the imagination. They have been our childhood companions. They have inspired entire franchises, including toys, video games, books, movies, and so much more. They are known to be a vessel or container of spiritual energies, due to their human-like figures and often hollow structures. Today, I would like to share with you some real-life personal stories of spooky encounters with BJDs. First, I'd like to share with you some of what I consider to be probably the most common and known to most BJD hobbyists or doll hobbyists, and that is when BJDs and dolls move all on their own. Yes, this is like probably super common. Probably most, if not all, doll collectors have had some kind of an experience with a doll moving seemingly by itself out of nowhere. I mean, we've made entire videos joking about how dolls will sometimes yeet themselves off the shelves. Face plant right onto the floor, chipping their face-ups. In fact, I think Amni's might even have a chipped eyebrow. In fact, that's happened to me, and one of my doll's eyebrows got chipped. And, yeah, it happens. It's common. It's very normal. In fact, there's a perfectly reasonable explanation and not at all paranormal. And I would like to share that with you today. But stay tuned at the end for an actual creepy story. So, first of all, dolls moving on their own sounds creepy, but once I explain to you what's probably most likely happening, you'll realize that it's not so much supernatural as it is science and physics, specifically. So, there have been a few videos in the past, one specifically that a commenter comments the timestamp of when in the video one of my dolls seemingly moves on its own in the background. I want to clarify for everyone today that first of all, that was not on purpose. I didn't edit the video with the dolls moving. I edit these videos, especially my BJD and a cup of tea videos, depending on what I'm saying, the content of what I'm sharing with you, and not so much what's happening with the dolls in the background. So the true purpose of what happened in that particular video was that I probably was talking, because I like to use my hands, and I probably bumped into the doll while I was talking, had to pause, fix the doll back, because I might have knocked her completely over, and then started back up. So when I edited that later, I cut that out based on my language and what I was saying, and didn't pay attention to where the doll was. So when the finished video was uploaded, I'm still talking, and what I'm saying sounds pretty reasonable and flowy, but in the background, because I had bumped the doll and then fixed her, she's no longer in the position that she was before. So anytime in a video specifically that you see something paranormal or supernatural happening, always question it. Video editing is so advanced, especially with the evolving of AI and video and graphics that now AI can do and the deep fakes, that you really can't trust video footage so much anymore. And you have to rely more on eyewitness accounts or your own personal experiences with whatever supernatural thing you want to talk about. So if you ever see the dolls moving in my videos, it is completely unintentional unless I'm trying to do a video about the dolls. Like it's like of like a doll thing, but usually I'm trying to do it for whatever content. So if I'm like doing a restringing video or a box opening video and you suddenly see the dolls like randomly seem to move, most likely there was some kind of editing that happened in that. Maybe the battery died and I came back, I stopped everything and came back, but in that movement of me leaving and coming, I knocked something. Okay, like simple, easy explanations. Now the other thing for dolls moving on their own that is not related to video editing or footage or anything like that, dolls do, especially ball jointed dolls, do sometimes seemingly move all on their own, and they will sometimes fall off of shelves and face plant and all of that, like I said. Now the reason for that is because, if you will recall from some of my other videos, these BJDs, ball jointed dolls, are hollow on the inside and they are held together by elastic string. So there's an elastic cord inside of there that when you move it and pose your doll in a certain position, there's tension building on that elastic. And over time, that tension needs to relax back to its original state. And as that tension slowly relaxes, depending on how dramatic the pose is, your doll may shift. These dolls may actually slightly shift. And depending on where that tension is holding when it comes to like the joints, this can actually cause like either very subtle small movements or big movements. And that can be why sometimes a doll will be seemingly supported and fine and then later move or fall because inside the tension is shifting. And to help illustrate, I actually have this is exercise band. It's the like rubber bands that you use when you do physical therapy. I've been in physical therapy due to a car accident and everything. This knot is, you put it in the door and you close the door and then you pull. So there's tension in this rubber band. You see like it stretches. It wants to go back to this relaxed state. So this is a bit extreme example, but the elastic inside of the dolls also, when you move them slightly, even just a little bit, like look, barely move. Can you see the tension, like the tightening here? You barely move it and there's tension. This wants to go back to its original state. So even if you barely move your dolls and come back to it, or you bump into them and slightly move them on accident, that tension may affect it to return to its original state. Another example that you can do yourself, if you have two hands available, put your hands together, clasp them like you're gonna beg for food, like Oliver Twist. More, please, sir. And then I want you to put your pointer fingers up like you're Sailor Mars and you're about to do some kind of cool fire fit move. Or, remember back in the day, dun, 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 dun. Spies, relax your thumbs. You don't have to worry about their thumbs. They can just cross. All right, now that you got your pointers up in the steeple position, if you grew up in Sunday school or Christian school like I did, you got your pointers up. I want you to separate them like a V, and then just kind of like watch what happens to your fingers after you separate them. Did you see that? Here, let me do it here. Ready? Do it so you can see it on the red background here. Separate. Slowly my fingers start to return together. If you do this yourself, you realize this is not, I'm not doing that. Like I am not even moving my fingers. They are doing that completely on their own, as if there's a force pulling them together like a magnet. What that is your body, this position is very unnatural for your tendons and your muscles and everything. So your body's trying to return to a relaxed state that's more comfortable and less strenuous. And so those fingers start to push together because they're just relaxing. Again, the elastic in your dolls is just relaxing, and your dolls, they're just kind of get comfortable. You can't expect them to stay in a crazy position. So anybody who's done photo ops with dolls and had to set them up, you know, we've been there. You also know if you've been pinched by your doll, if you've tried to move them or restring them or change their clothes and they pinch you, that's also just that tension trying to relax. So it's a very common thing. It's not at all supernatural, unfortunately, but it's super common. The other thing, especially with dolls falling over, seemingly completely out of nowhere on their own, vibrations. And I don't mean the good vibrations. I mean, sure, yeah, good vibrations, everybody, great, love it, vibing. I'm talking about like actual vibrations. Everything around us is vibrating constantly. There is sound waves, there are microwaves, there are UV rays, there's all kinds of rays, and there's all kinds of vibrating things that we cannot see with our eyes. Now in Florida, where I live, I've had some, extreme thunder that will rattle our windows because the vibration from the thunderclap, like that sound and the power of that clap, will vibrate the air and it will literally make the windows rattle. I also have a neighbor who works on cars and he revs the engines to like check to make sure they're doing well, and that will vibrate my windows like crazy. I just think the window is probably not super sturdy. But to that effect, vibrations all around us, whether you're stepping, depending on your foundation or the flooring, especially like maybe you have a second floor situation and you're walking around, just even your moves are vibrating subtly, causing little shifts in the air and in the ground around you that can cause whatever structure you have your dolls on. Whether it's, like me, I have them on a bookshelf, but I also have them on my desk. I have my little dragon doll, my baby, Zai Zai, on my desk, on my work desk. He's face planted a bunch of times because, one, he's not sturdy. Like, I don't have him secured well enough, especially you have to get the right balance for some of the dolls. Like, you have to get them balanced correctly on their feet. These feet are not big. Like, this is a little foot holding up a giant doll, right? You have to get the balance. So anything that can shift that balance can cause them to fall. Depending on how good the joints are and how locked they are, if they're not very sturdy and locked well, that could shift over time and cause it to fall. The tension that we talked about a little bit ago with the elastic, that can cause it to shift, and that shifting eventually causes it to fall. You can bump into see, look, you didn't see that. So just a gentle touch and my little robot doll is already shaking. None of my other dolls are shaking, even my regular toys aren't shaking, but I barely touched it. And this one's shaking over here. And I'm not worried about him falling. He doesn't even have any face paint or anything. But you might not see visually that the vibration is causing some kind of shifting in your setup, but it could be still affecting your dolls over time. And that can be anything from the wall that it's attached to shaking, to the floor, to somebody bumping into it. I mean, even when you go to grab a doll on this shelf, it could make the dolls on the other shelves shake because you're touching, any touch. So again, tremors and vibrations cause dolls to fall, face plant, you name it, it happens. I have not personally witnessed any dolls standing up on their own and running around the house or dancing or walking or any of that. If you have, please share. I'm fascinated to know. None of my dolls are smart dolls. They don't have any electronics or anything in them, so there's nothing that would make them move on their own, except for the things we just talked about, which is physics. It's not science. It's not supernatural. It's science. So pretty common, pretty easy. And I don't mean to put a damper on your holiday fun. Stories of dolls moving on their own are so common. Unfortunately here, it's not really something that I've personally experienced. However, this next story, get your spooky pants on. You ready? It's about to get spooky. So, speaking of dolls that fall, Nor here. Okay. Nor has these huge clunky dragon parts, okay? So his legs are very big, and he's also got, I don't know if I can show you this. Oh my god, I'm sorry, I don't want to offend your body. He's got a very beautiful, gorgeous, tail that is also attached to his bottom. So he is huge, he's heavy, he's clunky. All right, there we go. Yeah, here, sit down. And he's stunning. And that's not with his dragon wings or horns or anything. That's just because his body has the dragon parts on them, okay? So, the story I'm about to share is about Nor. And it happened to my child when they were probably between 3 and 4. Somewhere in that toddler 4 range. Very young. So, Nor is very large. When my child was a toddler, they were almost the same size. So my child treated Nor kind of like the, I don't know if you're as old as me, but there used to be a my size Barbie that was like kid size Barbie. Yeah, that was like the hot stuff back in the day. But, Nor was really close to my kid's size when my child was a toddler. So my child would come in and like treat Nor like a little buddy. So my child would come in and hug Nor, kiss Nor, pat Nor's head, put a blanket on Nor, and just kind of like treat Nor very kindly. And, you know, Nor's kind of a higher end doll. He's a little expensive, but like it's not being rough. There was no rough play. It was gentle. However, unfortunately, over time, that gentle love caused Nor, with his clunky feet and bad joints, to fall on top of and tackle my toddler. Now this instance, even to today, my kid's a little bit over, is almost 11. Even to this day, my child remembers Nor falling on them. Okay? That was a very, I wouldn't say traumatic, but it definitely left an impression and frightened my child pretty much. So the cute interactions and sweet, loving interactions between Nor and my child kind of stopped, like basically stopped for a while after that. And again, like that's not, I mean, of course that's going to happen. I knew that was a risk that was going to happen. Unfortunately, I thought Nor was a little bit stronger and sturdier and wasn't going to be so unstable. And I didn't expect the fall to be Nor like falling on top of and toppling my child, because my child was bigger than Nor at the time. Anyways, that definitely left an impression on my young child's mind. So, not long after that incident, at one point we were home alone. It was me, my kid, and I was in the kitchen. The kitchen is just outside and just across like a little walkway from this office. So there's a door. You can't see it, it's behind the camera. Straight behind the camera, I can see the kitchen from in here. So it's not too crazy. Like I can kind of see the kitchen sink from where I'm standing right now with the doors open. So my kid was in here playing alone, and I was in the kitchen. I don't know what I was doing. I don't remember. And my kid came to me and said, Mommy, your doll moved. And I said, okay. I'm thinking like my kid knocked the doll over again, you know, whatever. I mean, this is the only doll that was on the floor. All my other dolls were up high and out of the way. And I'm thinking, oh great, what happened? Let's hope they're not damaged or anything. So I stopped what I'm doing and I said, okay, what happened? Can you tell me? And my kid looks at me and says, Mommy, your doll did this. Your doll did that to me. Your doll did that to me. Your doll did this. Y'all, I'm not gonna lie, I did get some goosebumps at that time. I was still going through like a bit of a spiritual phase at the moment, at that time frame. So I was like, my doll did what now? Which doll? Who? What? What happened? Show Mommy. So we come back into the room. My kid points out Nor and says, Mommy, your doll did this. Okay. And I was like, okay. So I did what any good mother of a toddler does. And I looked at my dolls, especially Nor, and I said, You know better. We can't scare our baby like this. We don't scare people, okay? We don't need to move in front of the child. We don't need to scare the child. All right? And I look at the rest of the dolls and I said, okay, everyone, all my dolls, we don't move, we don't scare. That startled our child, that startled the kid. Let's be nice. Let's play nice together, okay? And then I looked at my kid and I said, okay, do you feel better? And my kid's like, okay. And then I will admit that after that, my kid's not very comfortable being around my dolls alone. I asked my kid yesterday, do you remember what happened with my dolls when you were little? And my kid goes, I don't want to talk about it. And I was like, oh crap. Ooh. What happened? And I was like, and it turns out my kid remembers Nor falling on them, but doesn't remember really anything else that happened. So, and talking about it made them uncomfortable because I think that fear of when the doll fell, I think that maybe did mildly traumatize my child, unfortunately, which is sad. It's unfortunate. But my kid did play with the other dolls, was a big fan of my YOSDs. They would do tea parties and stuff together once my kid was old enough to where I didn't feel worried that, and my kid likes my other dolls, my little ones, that the blind box dolls that I have. So it's not about dolls. My kid has dolls of their own, okay, like Barbie and other dolls and lots of stuffies. It's just that, you know, these dolls are a bit more intimidating, a bit more lifelike than a Barbie doll. And, you know, I think my kid is concerned about stability because the doll did fall and tackle them. So I imagine that was a little bit traumatizing. So take that as you will. Did it really happen? I mean, physically, there's not really any way this mouth could open on its own. There's no hinge or anything. I will say, for the record, that at that time, my kid had just gotten into the Nutcracker. So we went through a huge Nutcracker phase. And I mean Nutcracker ballet. We have an army of Nutcrackers in our house. It's my kids. They're in my kids' room. I mean, probably like at least 20 Nutcrackers of varying sizes. It used to be our tradition to get a new Nutcracker at Christmas every year with the date on it. But we have so many now, and it's just ridiculous because other people found out that my kid likes the Nutcracker, and suddenly our Nutcracker collection, you know, quadrupled. Yeah, don't let people know if you're into something, because then you'll have that, unless you are like into it, because then you'll have an army of these things that you maybe only liked for that season. Well, we went through a Nutcracker phase, and it was a very long, like several years long phase. And it was like May, and we were still watching Nutcracker ballets. And I mean, by Nutcracker ballets, I mean all of the Nutcracker ballets we could find on YouTube. So if you had like a little theater, I don't know, we watched some from London, the London Kids Ballet. We watched some from like some other countries. We watched some like from New York. We watched some from other smaller little studios and productions, and just if it's on YouTube, we probably watched it. We also watched like the cartoon, which I grew up watching that, and with Megan Follows, who was the voice of Megan from My Little Ponies, the original 80s My Little Ponies show. That was the voice of Clara. She's called Clara in that, I think, and not Marie. That's the other thing. So we've got Marie, we've got Clara. Marie's the original version. Clara's the version in a lot of the other modern US versions. And then Drosselmeyer. Anyways, whew, we got some Nutcracker lore. So my doll, that movement is what the Nutcracker does. It's what Nutcrackers do. So I'm kind of not surprised. I feel like there was a little bit more happening at that time. But I say all of that not to discredit my child, because I truly believe my child saw what they felt they saw, and that was the reality for them at that time. And I do think it impacted them to this day. But I leave that up to you to decide. Do you believe that supernatural things can happen with dolls? Do you believe in the supernatural at all? I truly think there are scientific and reasonable explanations for most things. I also think that the things that we don't know may have a scientific or reasonable explanation that we have yet to uncover. And that's what's beautiful. As we evolve as a species, as we evolve and our environment changes due to our impacts, we are learning more about the world around us and the universe at large. And there's so many things we still don't know, but it's so fun to try to uncover and learn. And I enjoy that, personally. I also love a good spooky tale around Halloween, so I felt like I should share some of these encounters with you. Unfortunately, that's really it as far as like creepy BJD stories. I don't really have anything out of that. I've had these dolls long before I had a kid, and obviously after having a child. And I've never had any other weird experience with them. Let me set you down. Don't fall. Here, I'll hold you. Yeah, Nora goes up to my thigh. Like, you can't see because you guys... But Nora is huge. He's a huge doll. So, I mean, that's intimidating, I should say. Out of all my dolls, Nora's intimidating. The most intimidating. I don't have any other weird spooky stories with dolls or even any other toys. And I've owned toys my whole life. I'm a big fan of toys. I have a very large My Little Pony collection. But I've never had anything like unsettling happen. Toys in general and my dolls bring me a sense of comfort. I find joy in having them and owning them and looking at them. And when I do get around to interacting with them, it brings me a sense of comfort and joy. And that's what I get out of this hobby. So feel free to share if you've had an actual... See, he just fell all by himself. Actually, not by himself. He's not standing very good because... And he's like, I'm trying to hold him up. I also have cats. So anytime something weird happens, I'm like, it's the cats. It's a cat. It's a cat. I've had cats my whole life. So I'm not surprised if something moves because there's probably a cat involved. My cat likes to crawl in behind the dolls. And sometimes that over time will knock them over. That's my experience. I don't have anything creepier. I kind of wish I did, but I don't. I guess that's a good thing, right? But feel free to share your own experiences, whether or not you believe that there are supernatural powers, whether or not you believe that dolls can be a vessel for spiritual energies or possession. Whatever your beliefs are, it's fun. It's innocent. There's probably a reasonable explanation, but feel free to share yours in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time. Bye. That was a pretty good evil laugh, huh?